Good morning and afternoon, everyone, depending upon where you're joining from. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join the session. Today, we're going to talk about how to survive, but more importantly, how to thrive as a business analyst, really in a world of increasing data complexities. So, we're planning on leaving some time at the end for questions. So please use the Q&A panel to submit any that you may have through today's session. We'll also be making the recording and slides available after the webinar in case you want to reference them later or share them with any of your coworkers. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the team. So my name is David Kettinger, and I have worn many hats over the past 10 years or so here at Quick Launch Analytics, including 7 years as a data analytics consultant, really helping our customers, business analysts, customize and adopt our Quick Launch solution as well as Power BI throughout their organization. And I did that for about 6 or 7 years before moving over to lead the marketing team, which is my current role. And today I'm really excited to have Ben Harrison with us. Ben is the Vice President of Product Management at Quick Launch Analytics. And if I remember correctly, you've been with the company for about 7 years.
Yep, that's right.
And I think before that, Ben, you've had various analyst type roles for most of your career. Including 18 of those working for a big construction company who also ran JDE Edwards. So in the trenches with JDE Edwards for a long time. And even though it's probably been a few years since your job title was business analyst, I'm excited to have you kind of share some of the lessons that you learned, which I think will be helpful with today's audience. So a little bit about Quick Launch Analytics. Some of you may have known us as Preferred Strategies. This year we went through a rebrand, which has been an exciting journey. But our company's been around, has been dedicated as being a partner in modern BI analytics for over 2 decades. And we're headquartered in the San Francisco Bay Area, Santa Cruz, if you're familiar. And our core mission is really to simplify data analytics and to help companies automate manual workflows and really provide a framework to integrate all your corporate data sources directly into Power BI. And so we accomplish this by delivering a comprehensive end-to-end platform that centralizes and transforms your data ecosystem into a unified and enterprise-wide foundation for trusted information. And what we found is this really allows companies to accelerate their time to insight or time to value with analytics and start to drive business outcomes that previously just weren't possible before they implemented a solution like that. So I'm going to jump into the content today. So we're going to start out just by kind of introducing the enterprise data dilemma. And then we're going to jump into the meat of the content, which is going to be this business analyst survival guide that Ben's put together for you. We'll walk through all of the points of the toolkit, and then kind of wrap up at the end with some key takeaways before getting into questions. All right, so when we talk about today's business environment, really many organizations are facing what we call the enterprise data dilemma. And you're likely experiencing some of these pain points yourself, whether it's from multiplying applications and having to start to integrate all of those and the headaches that come naturally from that, because obviously business systems don't naturally communicate with each other, right? So if we don't get ahead of this and have a plan to address it, then it starts to create these informational silos. And next, there's just really been an explosion of data, both from volume standpoint as well as just a variety of standpoint, right? So you got structured data coming from your ERP, you got unstructured data coming from social feeds and text and all sorts of complexity that's been added to the mix. And then just keeping pace with the rapid technological chain these days, from generative AI, right, to cloud platforms. And how do you make sure that you're evolving quickly with this rapid rate of technology advancement. And then next is really just talent shortages and finding people that have the skills, that have the data acumen to be able to navigate this changing world. It increasingly becomes more expensive and harder to find these analytics professionals. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is just security and governance, right? There's always regulatory requirements that we have to meet and data security concerns that we have to address. So that certainly doesn't make this easier and adds additional complexities for analytics initiatives. And really what we've seen is these challenges really create this perfect storm that may be preventing you or your organization from realizing the full potential of your data assets. And so I'm excited again to pass it over to Ben, who's going to guide you through how you can overcome these challenges in order to start really driving better business outcomes at your company. So Ben, with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. I wanted to start with this image of a Rube Goldberg type machine. I've always loved them. As a kid, I used to study how they worked. In this case, we've got a rather complicated assembly of clocks and wheels and levers and scissors in order to staple a piece of paper. I feel like some of my first efforts as a business analyst were jerry-rigged, kind of like that. They had all these little steps, very complicated. I knew how they worked, but nobody else really did. So the role of a business analyst, though, is to create meaning and value, to accomplish a task, to give insights to people, and that's part of the challenge. I got my first Swiss Army knife when I was 11, and I loved that tool. I could saw limbs, I could whittle sticks. I whittled wood down to nothing just because I could with my knife. You see, I've got kind of 8 little tools on here. I even had this one down here in the corner is a leather awl, and I had that, and I punched an extra hole in my belt, not because I needed one, but because I had the tool with which to do it. So that was a lot of fun. What I wanted to say though is that I want to talk about 8 specific tools today. They're going to be learn the business. Every business is unique in some way. That many ways businesses are the same, but there's always something special about each business that you need to figure out what that is. That those details impact the bottom line. Um, you're going to need to know the JD Edwards software really well, and I'll talk about that in more depth. You might think these first tools that I'm calling my toolkit aren't tools, but the fact is the rest of the tools don't work if you don't know the business and you don't know how JD Edwards impacts that. The next tool will be looking at automated data flows. We'll talk about establishing a single source of the truth that you can rely on. Uh, Focusing on tangible business improvements. That's another tool in the tool set. Enhancing report security and eliminating redundancy, essentially simplifying where you go and get your information from. You need to make sure the dashboards and reports that you're using are understandable, they're accessible, people can really embrace them quickly. And then the last thing is you need to have self-service reporting. I'm going to come back to that self-service reporting multiple times. I always think that business analysts need to be enablers versus doers. So you need to be creating things that enable your users to thrive, then you will thrive as well, as opposed to being this source that people often have to come to. So let's get started. So my first tool was learn the business. And my first job as a business analyst was with a ready mix company. It's called Tykert Ready Mix in Northern California. It's a vertically integrated company. Tykert had construction, ready mix, materials, and aggregates. But I was assigned to the ready mix department. And one of the first things I needed to do was to learn that business. And what they did is that even though I reported to the IT organization as a business analyst, I set out in the shop a facility that looked like this. There was a little office there. down there. This is not the exact one, but I sat out there with the people doing the work, with the payroll clerks, with the batch operators, with the truck drivers, with the salespeople, and I learned that business from them. So they knew their business. They'd been doing it a long time. My job was to bring technology and process improvements to that business. But again, I had to learn that. So my advice to you is make sure you understand those nuances. The people I've worked with, this is a successful company. They knew what they were doing, but there's still room for improvement because they didn't understand what technology could do. And that was my job. I did find a lot of small, quick improvements. That's that third little bullet point on the bottom. You're not going to necessarily show up in a business and make a big bang and transform everything, but you can make small improvements add up to significant money. There are probably long-term goals. In the case of my job there was to look at a new ticketing system for the system. But those long-term goals again cannot be built on without that kind of business knowledge. And I mentioned before, I'm going to say it again later, be an enabler versus a doer. If you set up systems where you have to be the point of contact for every little bit, you're going to inundate yourself. As David said, one of those data challenges is there's just too much to do, too much data, too much analysis. So you need to be able to farm that out as much as possible. The next tool in my toolkit is to learn the software. When I showed up at that Ready Mix company, I didn't know what JD Edwards was. I didn't know anything about it. So I took classes. I used to go off site to classes. I like that because it gave me a chance to get out of the office a little bit, get away. But there's a lot of more options today than there were then. There are great sources. I know of iLearn, JDE Tips, Udemy. There's JDE List. There's more than that. If you want to know, training options, Google or even ChatGPT can give you a lot of choices there. But take the time to get trained. I'm certain that there's functionality within JD Edwards that you could be using today, and you're not because you're just not aware of it. And you'll learn about that through learning JD Edwards. I found it very important to connect to the data. We had a ODA driver. We had an AS400, and that was really clumsy. But as a business analyst, I found sorting through the source data very helpful. So have a way to connect to the data, look at the tables, understand what's happening, make changes, and track that down. To help understand that, there's a website called jde.erpref.com or erpref.com, and that is a really good useful tool. There's a screenshot of what it looks like down here. But the JD Edwards database is complex. There's a lot of layers to it. There was a lot of meaning to it. What I found as I learned JD Edwards is I really love it and I really hate it. And so there's things it does beautifully and there's things that are cryptic, but you need to be able to explore that data. I also found dissecting existing reports really helpful. Somebody before me had built some logic in a report, understanding what they did actually provided insights into how the software worked. We were using Crystal reports back then. I still use Crystal reports today to dissect old legacy reports to understand what's going on underneath the covers of that data system. The last thing is you're certainly going to have other data sources. Nobody uses JDE alone. The Ready Mix company I used had a ticketing system. We had Kronos as a time entry system. And so the understanding that it's not just JD Edwards you need to learn. When you're learning the software, there's these ancillary systems that are going to be very important to you as well. This is something that I had done. This is how I used to do reporting back in my legacy days. I had JD Edwards. I would collect that data. Sometimes I'd use supplier ledger inquiry or somehow to get that data, and I'd download that into Excel. Excel became this storage database tool where I'd do transformations, I'd do VLOOKUPs to get category codes, and then I would eventually analyze that eventually I could, in the long term, I could use Power BI, but originally I was always using Excel, and I still see that most common today. People use Excel for analysis. It's a great analysis tool. It's a really awful database. The problem with this legacy reporting workflow, which is what I did, is that it is very manual. It takes just too much time. The refresh methods are really error prone. If you think you're downloading and there's a formula, it's so easy to get those things messed up, or if you have a history, to overwrite your last month's data when you didn't mean to. So just that type of manual workflow is it's not sustainable. It's not expandable. The last point about that is it requires inside knowledge. I would build those Rube Goldberg type machines, and I knew how they work, but nobody else did because it required very specific things, very specific steps. One of our customers had a report that the president of the company used, and the person who made that report went on vacation 2 weeks, and they didn't get the report for 2 weeks. And the president said that will never happen again. So think about automating your data flows and your refresh processes. Take them out of that manual method. And so the bottom line there is you want to centralize your data, you want to model it, you want to take action. We find today that data lakehouses are the modern way to do that. Back when I was a first business analyst, everyone was talking about OLAP cubes. OLAP cubes were powerful but very structured, very rigid, and created a lot of obstacles to be worked out. Data lake houses really are an extension of what used to be a data warehouse and a data lake, hence a data lake house. And if you're considering automating processes today, you need to be looking at a data lake house type structure. And then you need to figure out how you're going to transform that into a model so you can take action. At Quick Launch Analytics, this is kind of our view of what that process should look like. You can see, what ERP represents JD Edwards. There's other ERPs out there. We got customers using NetSuite, Vista, Salesforce, OneStream. All those are possible sources, but you also have maybe Bamboo HR or some, I mentioned a ticketing system in that ReadyMix plant, or an estimating system. There's so many other, data sources that you need to put into this automated data flow. So that means a data pipeline that helps you replicate that. You centralize the data in that data lakehouse, and then ultimately you're going to analyze that data. And so that's what this element does. And you want to have an analysis tool or analysis foundation so that you can use whatever tool is appropriate. It might be Power BI. Sometimes it is Excel. It might be some sort of AI type of analysis that you want to do that. But again, this flow is automated and it's a complete ecosystem, and you might have multiple technologies that are enabling that. The next step really is focused on this enterprise analytics. What you want is that one version of the truth. So let's look at what that kind of looks like. I made this animation. Honestly, I'm a little proud of it, maybe too proud. I've never built an animation till this, but the idea here is you've got data silos. I used to write a report that was an AP open or an AR aging. I wrote reports, and my coworker Heather wrote reports, and ultimately we had, 150 reports, each one its own little individual data silos. So what you need to be able to do is say, I want to merge all those things and start looking at it holistically. And that's what we're talking about in terms of a single source of the truth. So that's the challenge here, is how do you create a big data source, a semantic data model that eliminates those data silos. And what that means is you're going to have a customer table and only one customer table, one vendor table, one logic will be centralized. So if you don't do this, you're going to have discrepancies between your different reports. And people will say, well, my report says this, my report says that. And so you cannot afford, in an analytics world, when you're trying to become drive excellence, you just have to build a single source of the truth. That way it needs, again, the silo approach is not governable. It's not in the long run sustainable. So it's really important. I do have that bullet point there, design thoughts about category codes. As a business analyst, as I was building these data sets, I would have to often create brand new category codes. And you need to think carefully about that. Now, I've got a link later on. There's a downloadable link that we can send you that has a whole session devoted to category codes. But one of the things, just as an example, if you add a new category code, make sure that blank is not an option. If there's 6 choices, one of the choices should be NA or not applicable, not blank. Because when a category code's blank and you try to run reports, you don't know if someone just missed it and you've got noisy, messy data, or whether it was really not applicable. So make sure you're designing your category codes so that they're full and my point is ambiguity in this area is your enemy. So think about when you build this single source of the truth, doing that. I mentioned that blue cube. There is a lot of things to consider in that. And so I like talking about it at this level. In our particular semantic data model, we have, I think, 21 to 22 modules, a bunch of perspectives. A module is around a single table like inventory or sales. So you think about a single look at inventory or a single look at sales, where you're merging all the fact data of back orders and sales and order date and ship date, open orders. Those are kind of all grouped together in these perspectives, and they're very well planned, they're very thought through, often in a star schema layer. Master dimensions, again, I mentioned to you, you might only have one customer table, one vendor table, and you share those across all your other perspectives. And so that means that if I pick a customer and a name that's consistent, that's also important when you're merging data, let's say from Salesforce and JDE. What's the name of the customer if you want to look across those two? And that's one of those transformational things that you can do in that data lakehouse. The last element I want to talk about here is measures and KPIs. This is where you're defining business logic. That might be things like time-based elements based upon a calendar, but it could be things like backlog or on time and full. Those rules, that business logic, should be recorded in one formula, one place. If I used to build those in Crystal reports in each individual data silo, you might define a data range in one way and slightly different in another report, and the risk is that they're not in alignment, and that causes a lot of problems. So think about this data model holistically, and it will serve you really well. You want to drive tangible business improvements. So this is my 5th tool in my Swiss Army knife, and this is where I want to. I had a lot of fish to catch, metaphorically, as a business analyst, and there's too many things to do, and it's going to be the same for you. Just too much to get done. So my recommendation is choose carefully. Don't try to improve everything at once. Create a roadmap. Let your internal customers help you prioritize those things to do. Maybe there's 20 things on that roadmap. Pick 2 or 3 and work on those alone. One of the things you'll find is that being a business analyst is also about being a change management expert, because people will go back to doing things the way they've always done it unless you're helping them manage that change. People find change hard. They'll revert to their old ways if there's not some sort of oversight or encouragement to do it the new way. And honestly, the new way is going to bring those benefits you're looking for, but it's going to be hard. So catch the fish, pick them carefully, and then work hard at getting that change accepted. The other thing about driving tangible business and improvements is that you really want to tie them to some sort of business outcome that's important to your company. If you're trying to create a change and it's not tied to one of these elements, reducing risk, increasing revenue, decreasing your costs, your productivity or efficiency or customer satisfaction, optimizing assets or time, um, making customers happier or team members happier. Those things are tangible, they're important. And so your business improvements, your initiatives you're trying to tackle need to be tied to something like this that becomes motivational, it becomes inspirational. We have customers who have examples about the change in the time it takes to do a credit report, uh, changing customer satisfaction because they're connected. And so these efficiencies, these changes should eventually roll into something where you point to and say, yes, we increased our revenue, or yes, we've reduced our risk. And that then becomes the foundation to do the next change. And that's how you become successful in business analytics. We need to cover security, the sixth tool on my Swiss Army knife. Security, in my experiences, can be complex and troublesome. You've got to secure your data. Your company must be protected, and you must be able to manage it. But you can over secure and you can under secure your data. So you want to consider your security application carefully. There's lots of places and ways to secure your data, your reports. There's the workspace level, at the report level, at row level security, and there's reasons to do it at each one. But you want to align those security requirements with business requirements. I know that I was burnt a couple of times, the Tykert, when I worked there, with vendor level security, where a vendor would call me saying, "What about an invoice?" I say, "I don't see that invoice," but someone had coded it and charged it to the aggregates business instead of the construction business. So it's apparently invisible to me, even though I was supposed to be the one approving it. So that's where security can create bottlenecks and trouble. One thing that you do want to make sure you do is so again, tie business needs to security. But when you do apply security, apply it to the source. So you think about that blue cube that we're talking about. You want security applied at that level so that if I use Excel to inquire or I use Power BI to inquire, the cube itself is returning the data I need to see, not it, so the security not necessarily built into the report, but built into the data source. That's where you're going to get the big bang for your buck at that level. My seventh tool that I want to talk about here is creating streamlining report creation and adoption. So this is really a philosophical idea. I'll just walk through it specifically. Good dashboards tell us a clear story. They're going to take you on a journey where someone's trying to get to an aha moment, and you want to build and design that well. This is a skill, something you can learn. There's classes you can take on that. There's, I think, a really inspirational uh, set of courses by a guy named Edwin Tufte that helps you understand how do you communicate information visually. And I do want to emphasize the visual part of it. I have experience with people who can look at rows and columns of data, hundreds of rows of data, dozens of columns of data, and they can notice the outliers in those rows and columns right away. They're almost savant-like in that way. That's the exception. Most people need pictures. The idea that pictures tell us 1,000 words, that's true. So work at getting better at using the right visualization to tell the story. And I'll talk about more about that in a minute. Another part of analytics that's important is good answers lead to new questions. It's very seldom that analytics leads you to always to a smoking gun. Usually the first level of analytics is going to take you to a new why. There's a good book by a guy named Simon Sinek called, Start with Why. And it's, his point would be there's 5 levels of why. You find a question, you get an answer, you say why. You go to another why, another why. And so good answers lead to new questions. You should expect your dashboards and your reports to help lead that question and answer cycle journey. Ultimately, the aha moments, the things that are going to help your end user say, I see what's going on there, are going to be in the details. The trend or the outlier or the correlation is going to help them understand where to search, but the answer is going to be in the details. And I'll give you an example of that as well. To help get better at this, you can look at um, uh, different ways to visualize. My advice here is to pick a tool and standardize it at your company. If it's Power BI, which is what we think is the best, I would use Power BI. It could be Tableau, could be an Oracle tool set, but pick a tool and have everyone use it. You want to have that common use field and a common understanding of the visuals being used. Create a standard template layout. So if you have slicers on your reports, and you want them on the left-hand side of the screen, always put them on the left-hand side. Don't sometimes put them one place and another. So create a way at your company that everyone knows how to look and use that report. And then know which visualizations works best for the situation. Visualizations are way beyond pie charts or donut charts. Sometimes those are the right chart, but if you're looking at a comparison or a change over time or a ranking or a part to a whole, there's going to be specific visualizations that do those tasks best, and make sure you're using those tasks for the one you need. I've got a sample report here I just want to talk about real quick. It's not probably it's not everything to everybody, but I like some things about it. One is it is trying to tell a story. And in this case, it's organized by kind of a big set of indicators here. Red being a color is chosen to indicate I've got some problems. I'm going to want to look into it. In that, then I can break down sales versus prior year or gross profit versus prior year and look at numbers by sales channel. I might look at a variance chart. Now, variance charts are really neat. They are great for, it's called a waterfall chart, but it shows you the variance between this year and that year. But if you see the variance, ultimately you're going to want to know more about that. And so you can add context to your reports in the way of tooltips and cross filtering. So in this case, I have a tooltip. If I pick that particular data item, I can see a lot more about it. So it's not just that there's a variance between this year and last year, but what was last year? What is this year? How do I understand the variance and some more information about that in times? So the tooltips can be very simple. They can be very complex, but they add context to your visuals and help people understand what's really going on. One thing that maybe wasn't apparent, but when I picked this particular data point here, that which is the Jason Lee as the salesperson, my sales overview narrative changed. So this is called cross filtering, and a lot of times people think of up here you have kind of a traditional slicer, and that's one way of filtering data. But using visuals to cross filter is also very, very powerful. To where you essentially by my clicking on Jason Lee, I filtered on that data, and it filtered all the other data points on this report. Beyond the idea that I can interact with this report at this level, I can right click and I can drill down, right? So if I want to say Jason Lee's in trouble, where at? Well, I can see now that he's primarily in trouble in appliances. Ultimately, you want to drill through to the details. And the details, again, is where I said you're going to get that aha moment. This is where we're going to find out, what is he selling? And I might go check last year and see what did he sell last year and what's the difference. Jason probably want to do this as well. This is where hopefully Jason's coming in and understanding his own business. He's an end user. He has a tool to slice and dice and get better at what he's doing and what he's selling. He might even notice that some of his colleagues are doing particularly well in different products and help understand the business overall. So the details are important. Make sure that the nature in this case, because that one source of the truth is built on transactional detail, that means that I can see the summaries, I can see the big trends, I can look for the correlations, the outliers, but I don't have to go run another report to go and get to that data. So that's when you think about what you're providing, the whole idea of being an enabler versus a doer, the enabler is looking for that next level, that why is that? Why? And then again, why? To ultimately, you still may have to find out why your customers aren't buying a certain product this year. but at least you know which customer to talk to and which products to talk about. So design, report design, this is a skill that you can develop. I'm not the best report designer in the world, but I do notice when one's done well, and well done report design is going to be exceptionally powerful in helping drive insights. Another thing to think about as you're, picking the tool, one of the first things I said in this particular tool set is to choose the tool that you want to use. That's been recently, in our point of view, Microsoft. This is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. If you don't know, aren't familiar with Gartner, Gartner is a independent agency that just ranks all sorts of technologies. So this is a business intelligence tool technology ranking, and they've placed Microsoft at the top. So I'm going to do some quick checking here and say compare Microsoft to Tableau to Oracle. And this is a scatter chart. Hopefully I'm showing you some tools that might ideas that might help you think differently about how you display data. The neat thing about a scatter chart is I can actually play it on a time axis, so I can see since 2012 how these tools have ranked against each other. And so again, for our company, Quick Launch Analytics, we've really liked the Microsoft tool, particularly for the last 7 or 8 years. They've been in the clear leader. Tableau also has been good. They've been a leader for a long time. They're a fine option. Microsoft's still ahead of them. The one that I am very fascinated with is back in 2012, in 2010, Oracle was actually quite a leader here. So think of JD Edwards, the Oracle environment, and they had some stumbles, but they've been coming back. And I'm very interested to see what happens with Oracle in this 2025 results when they come out, and see if they continue to try to catch up with Microsoft. But today, Microsoft's the clear leader, and our customers are finding that Microsoft's really the one that makes sense because they're already using Office, they already have Excel, they already have Word, they got PowerPoint that gets embedded, so that Microsoft Office suite is just really nice to work together on as a holistic tool set. All right, my last tool that I want to talk about today is to make sure you're enabling self-service reporting. This is back, I think the third time I've said it. Don't be the bottleneck. If you're a successful business analyst, it's not about running reports for people. It's about creating ways for them to get their own insights. We've found this again and again in our customer base, that if you give end users the ability to answer questions for themselves, the results will be astounding. We saw that actually really clearly during COVID. One of our customers during the COVID downturn, the president of the company told every department on Friday, saying, I need you to come in on Monday, not come in, but phone in by that time on Monday and tell us your plans because COVID is going to impact our business. And they had our tool. The IT department manager who we were talking to said he was astounded by the quality of the insights driven when you give a good tool in the hands of end users who can get to the data and they can discover those aha moments or those proposals on their own, and you don't have to go through business analysts to get that done. So that's I can't emphasize that enough. Make sure your end users can self-service. And so that means, again, change, that means training, that means teaching them how to do some fishing when they used to hope for that you would bring them all their fish. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice here. One element of that is the idea of self-service mobile reporting. So if you think about a traditional dashboard that's shown here on the left-hand side, that's on a screen, a computer screen. It might have a lot of information, very useful. It's structured in a way where it would have a template where the slicers are always on the left. But people expect that to be mobile these days. And a tool like Power BI, one report can have a mobile layout and like a computer layout. And so this is my point about this is think about your end users. And if they're going to be using this report on a mobile device, you need to plan for that. That probably means that the slicers are in a different spot. They might even be a different format. They might be tiles instead of drop downs. Um, and most tools now can make that accommodation so that one report can be seen mobilely and in the office. And you want to make sure that you're considering mobile analysis. So to kind of summarize, what's Quick Launch do? And, for business analysts, why would we matter? First, Quick Launch doesn't just provide tools. We're providing an analytics ecosystem that addresses every layer of the value chain. What that means is, that ecosystem isn't designed to answer one question, one report at a time. It's meant to be the foundation to to answer 1,000 questions. Our solution is pre-built so that time to value is unsurpassed. We've got decades of experience that we've put into creating this platform so that you can be up and running and getting value out of the system in a few weeks instead of years. Our application packs, so JD Edwards is one of our application packs. I mentioned we have some other ones, even one for Salesforce, uh, have deep domain knowledge in them, right? So specialized. How does JD Edwards work? It's a very complicated system. There's a lot of modules. It's very hard to understand every possible module between work orders, inventory, procurement, AR, AP, sales, GL. There's just a lot to know. And so this domain knowledge is something that you're going to want to have, but Quick Launch Analytics provides a lot of that. We do know about cloud technologies. If you're moving to a lake house type world, that is new stuff. It's really Fabric's a lake house, Databricks is a lake house. So if you're looking at those type of environments, you're going to need to understand how they work, and we have experience and knowledge about that. And the last maybe point I want to make is that we want to tie to business outcomes. So it's not just technology. Technology doesn't make you um, money or impact your bottom line by itself, but technology applied to a business problem eventually should bring one of those business results that we talked about earlier. And as a business analyst, your job is to get the results or to provide the pathway to results. It's not just to analyze, it's to analyze with the point of a benefit, a value. So time to value, if you think about what you could do of how fast you can build a report with that pre-built model, the idea, the governance and security that IT is so worried about security these days and governance, and they should be. This is a way to create a system that really is yours for the future. We prepared this downloadable PDF that has more information about each one of these tools. So I've got Learn the Business, Automate Data Refreshes. So if you scan that top code, and I'll leave this up here for a second so you have a chance to grab your phone and scan that, you can download a PDF that will include these other codes for each one of the tools. It's just a little bit more information. I mentioned to you one of these is the user-defined fields. That's that Learn JD Edwards of how do you use those user-defined fields well. And I'm sorry, that's number 4, user-defined fields. Hopefully these will be good expansions on what we've been talking about here so far today, and that this can be useful to you in really not only surviving but thriving as a business analyst. I have to say I loved being a business analyst. It was a very rewarding job and very satisfying to help my users become more proficient. And so I look back on those times with great fondness. So, David, that leads us to questions. Do we have any questions so far?
Yeah, Ben, thank you. That was great knowledge that you just shared. We did have a couple questions come in. The first one was my biggest challenge is with data quality and trust. How does the Quick Launch platform help identify and resolve data integrity issues before they get a report?
Oh, that's a great question. So data quality is the bedrock of trusted analytics. If you can't trust the data, They're not going to use reports. And so you need to make sure that is a plan as you're building this. When you think about that lake house, you want to have some tools in there that are validating things, looking for errors, and right up front as you bring data in, what's missing, and you can create warnings and auditing functionality to make sure that the data coming into the lake house is complete and full. But it's also true that you'll never have your business processes in line until you start analyzing your data. So people ask me all the time, should I clean the data first before I analyze it, or should I start analyzing it? And the thing is, you won't know what to clean until you analyze it. So there's a chicken and egg thing there, but you can use the lake house and the foundation packs to do that work, row counts, checking totals, making sure fields aren't duplicated. We've seen, lot numbers get duplicated in the lake houses where you might find that. So a lot of things that can happen there. The point is, quick launch and that data flow will drive cleaner data and better analytics as an iterative process.
All right, thanks, Ben. We had another question around our analysts spend a lot of time in Excel. How does quick launch bridge the gap for users who are comfortable in Excel, but also need to work with a more enterprise level data set?
That's a great question, David. As I mentioned, I used to download everything to Excel, and that became a little database in itself. I knew how it worked. It was very error prone. Formulas get overwritten. So if you noticed in that chart, and I won't bring it back up, but if you've got that governed data set, that semantic data model, we'll call it the blue cube in this case, you can connect to that using a tool like Power BI. You can use paginated reports or SSRS reports, or you can connect to it using Excel. That allows Excel, so people who need to use a governed data set can still use Excel, the tool they know and love, and get used to using that data set up front, and then eventually maybe move to Power BI, but they don't actually need to. If Excel's doing the slicing and dicing they need to get the insights they're looking for, Excel's still a great tool, but they have a governed data set, so you don't have those errors sneaking in. So you don't have to take Excel away from your users.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a great point. Having one data set that you can connect to from multiple tools is pretty
Right.
powerful. So the last question I see here is our we use a heavily customized version of JD Edwards. How do your application packs handle custom fields and tables and business logic that are unique to us?
Oh, that is again a great question. Companies use JD Edwards because it's so highly customizable, and so every customer we have is customizing those fields, all the user-defined fields. If you think about the business unit master, the F0006, there's MCRP 01, 02, 03, 04, up to 52. So all those need to be renamed. Our standard installation process is going to read your data dictionary, actually look at all those codes and find out which are being used, and ask you specifically, are the names correct? Are the fields complete? What needs to be included and what's not? The company I work for, Tiker, we built standard 5506, so we call it the F5506, and you can build those into the model as well. So the nature of JD Edwards itself is highly customized, and the nature of quick launch is we're going to read those customizations and modify it so that it works for your company.
All right, great, Ben. Thank you for that. And that is the last of the questions. So just to end up, thank you all for your time today, and thanks for Ben for sharing all your insights. We hope to see you at some of our upcoming events. We have a little bit more tech focused webinar coming up in July called the Data Jedi's Playbook, and then we'll also be at SCUG and HUG JDE user groups this summer, and then we'll be out in Denver for In Focus. So hopefully we'll see you at one of the upcoming events. So yeah, thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.